and good evening. I'd like to welcome you to yet another edition of County Fair. I'm Jason Grisgorick, Waycross Community Media's Government Access Coordinator, giving you that opportunity to speak to those in the know here on County Fair in your fair county of Hamilton, Ohio. I'm very fortunate to have with us, starting out 2014, of course, County Recorder Wayne Coates. Wayne, glad you could join us.
Always glad to be here.
It's always wonderful to start out the new year with you, and of course this will be our third meeting of the Minds at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
And each year something new comes about, and since most of you are sitting at home in the cold, it's a great way to warm up, get yourself a nice cup of coffee or whatever, enjoy some discussion here because we've got some new and exciting things to talk about, and we're going to be playing around with the website, so you won't want to miss that as well. So, Wayne, welcome back to 2014 here at the Round Table. And of course, a lot has happened in 2013, which has made your office just as enjoyable, if we can say that. The pressures that be, of course. But let's start with the positive. And of course, the last time that you were here, but from the last time, you were actually elected as the president of the Ohio Recorders Association.
Yes, that's back in November. I took on that charge. Actually, I'm only the second recorder since 1927 who's from Hamilton County.
Wow.
Our last one was Gil Schaefer back in the 50s.
That's a wide span, but at least, you know,
Yeah.
And we're looking at a short amount of time in political sense, in your political sense especially, of being in this office. So to be where you are, quite an accomplishment.
Well, I don't know whether it's an accomplishment. No, actually, it's quite an honor. You know, we represent 88 county recorders, and the association, which has been into an organization since 1927, and actually, I would say that in the last 5 years that I have been a recorder, that is really what's given me the foundation to be a better recorder, because you know, the Recorders Association, we share a lot of data. Matter of fact, today I got several emails on a question of a new law that goes into effect on the 30th.
Okay, so by the end of the month here.
Right, and there's a little conflict as far as what the auditors have read it into the law as opposed to what the intent was. And I think it's in 319, basically, the county engineer and the auditor, they put together the standards, okay, so that when you file a conveyance, you would file it in a certain format. And we thought that during the discussion of the House Bill 72, that we thought that maybe during that discussion, maybe the recorder should be invited into the conversation. Apparently, the powers to be in the Auditors Association said, we don't really need you. And so we just said, okay, well, if you don't want us at the table, just, you know, comply with 317, which is our controlling section. So the discussion, again, I got several phone calls and several emails today in regards to that. And the intent of the law was just to have them comply with 317 so that therefore we're not left out in the code, because when they draft the legislation, things like legal descriptions, you know, our county is by grantor and grantee. If you look at the auditor's site, they're book, page, and partial. But then our code says grantor and grantee.
So it's a matter of cleaning up legalese and having a full communication with one another as opposed to...
Well, you know, here when I saw the way our standards were conveyed, I just contacted, at that time, Bill Brashaw, and I said, you know, if you could just add my name to your standardization so that maybe they could consult with the recorder's office on some of the details that may be needed. And Bill said, that's fine. So I'm named just with the engineer and the auditor as well as myself. So again, it works. It's just, but again, you got 88 counties.
Right.
88 opinions, and that's why we have an AG's opinion, and the law.
And the law, of course. Now, it sounds like, obviously, this is something that is this is bestowed upon by election of some sort within the 88 of you, or is this by appointment only?
No, this is an actual election.
Okay.
But again, I started the rotation a few years ago, and I came in as treasurer. And last year I served as vice president. But again, you still are elected by the body. And it was at the winter convention that I was elected. So,
were you expecting this nomination, or was it more of a greater honor and a surprise?
oh well, it was more of an anticipation. Actually, one of the charges of the vice president is to plan the winter conference. So I really had not a lot of time to think about it because I was trying to get everything in order for the winter conference, because we have continuing education. Of course, we have the meals and the vendors, and it's just a lot more work. And I always was kind of teasing with him. I said, you know, I think you give that charge to the vice president to see if he has the organizational skills to be the president. So, but as I say, it's quite an honor, and I really appreciate their confidence in me.
And the length of your term then?
1 year.
It'll be a 1 year term.
It'll go to next November.
And are you at that point eligible? It sounds like you'd be eligible for re-election, or is this something that?
Well, I would probably go in as past president.
Okay. All right.
Really, I think that any organization, what we try to do is again, I think it's better to continually have a flow of individuals, because although, you know, we're always elected bipartisan, but our organization, we do not get into the partisan issues. Basically, what we look at is the next person that comes in as the treasurer. This year was the Democrat. Next year, it will be a Republican. Next year after me, I'm a Democrat. Next year, the president will most likely be a Republican. So we rotate.
Seems fair. It obviously is working in certain favors for those elected. So.
Well, we really don't look at partisanship in the organization. Really what we look at is what can we do to benefit the 88 county recorders. And that's why what we ended up doing was we worked on our legislation as far as in House Bill 59 to change some of the registered land laws. And then in House Bill 72, it was a cleanup bill that changed a lot of the, or I should say updated a lot of the code that affects the recorder's office. So again, that was something that it took us 4 years to do, but we finally got it passed this year.
And so obviously presidency, as the name does infer, does come with a lot of responsibilities. And it sounds like amending and or, as you were saying, refining laws as a major portion of that job. What else do you find is the key component to this position then?
Well, let me digress for a moment, because we have a legislative committee in our recorders, and we have about 9 individuals, plus our executive committee sits in on those meetings. So I already knew what the dynamics were going to be, but again, I think one of the pluses that I have is that I have been a former state rep.
Bringing that.
So when we look at the laws, I have offered many of changes to those laws. And but then I'm kind of an exceptional to that point because I've served in the legislature. But what I think I bring to it is, you know, my wealth of background. You know, I've almost been probably close to 20 years now. I've been in public service. You know, I've been a mayor, councilman, state representative, county bailiff, now recorder. So I say, although also in my private life, you know, as being a real estate broker and a home builder. So I bring a lot of information to it, but also I have a certain regimen of looking toward things.
And I guess I will ask in that means, what are you looking towards in this position, or especially in your job here in the county?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier is that actually the other day there's been a lot of people trying to draft me to run for county commissioner, and again I'm humbled by that because it takes a lot of people to do that. But you know, the bottom line is that I'm very content being the county recorder. It's a good fit for me, you know, with my real estate background. So you know, I talked to Commissioner and President of the Commission, Chris Monzel, the other day, and I told him, I said, I just want you to hear from me that I'm not going to be running against you. I said, you know, I have something to do downstairs, and that's take care of the recorder's office.
And it sounds like we will keep you around for a little while longer, at least until your term allows it.
Well, I got 3 more years in my term, and we'll see how my health holds out, and we'll move from there.
We'll move from there. At least we know we'll have 3 more years with you here at the desk.
Well, we're looking for it.
If you're joining us tonight on the 27th, please give us a call. We are live tonight. 825-3971 is our phone number. Live at waycross.org is our email address. We're going to get into this, a very fun section here. We're doing a little show and tell here. So if you're interested in finding out what we're going to be talking about here, come on and join the conversation. that was an interesting point that you made. It's not an artist colony, and I think that's what a lot of people might have in their mindset, that that's what this is. We're just a bunch of people, free thinkers, we're coming up. No, you're actually helping these people create sustainable jobs.
And businesses,
And businesses
that would be sustainable and move and remain and grow in our community, in Hamilton County, in Southwest Ohio. Investment capitalists, angel venture capitals, they want to know what the exit strategy. How are they going to sell this business? How is the entrepreneur going to move on? How are they going to make money? You know, either through an IPO, initial public offering, or through a merger or an acquisition. Our exit strategy is really, where are you going to graduate within the community after the 3 to 5 years? And some take longer. Some have gone, 8 to 10 years. That was the other thing that hit us with the recession. They were creditworthy, but landlords could not get the financing because they had no track. The companies were not nationally rated, so they couldn't get the financing for the leasehold improvements until the recession turned around. But we're really looking at companies that are going to, our term of exiting is, how do you exit from the incubator into the community, into conventional space, be it Blue Ash, be it Norwood, be it the city of Cincinnati, where probably the plurality of our businesses have gone.
And it sounds, from the industries that are present within the business center, that sounds like target areas for them. You know, Blue Ash heavily with industrial and the idea, and Norwood obviously keeping it very local. But going into the whole city of Cincinnati and Hamilton County in general, do you find that there has been ease of going into, out of the incubator, out of your space, into the real world? Or has it been a bit of a struggle?
I've heard that I've heard from some successful graduates, and others have heard the same thing. There's a little bit of a culture shock. And it's more or less, I like to say they would miss me. Of course, they really, they don't, usually I deal more with the problem children, those that are struggling in some capacity, whereas the coaches are dealing more with the guidance and the business assistance. But what I've heard is they miss the coaching, but they miss the other tenants. They miss the other entrepreneurs. When we had our 25th event last week, we brought back Dr. Tom Reed. He had a company called Genomatics 10 years ago, as it was, could not get capital in the community, but found it in Virginia, so moved there. Last year, a year ago, his company, now called Intrexon, became the largest IPO of any biomedical firm.
Wow.
They're involved in DNA modifications and that. And there's been a number of things that have grown. But it was interesting when Tom came back that he cited some of the tenants that he would, they were having good day, bad day. They might run down to UDF and get an ice cream together or something, but just bouncing things off the wall with each other. And because everyone is in the same boat. They may be at different stages, but someone, say, has been in there a couple years, they know what it's like to be the new person on the block. Whereas if they have this commonality, even though it's a different type of business. We've tried to keep from having competitors. We've had on occasion some in there which sort of worked out, but we tried to stay away from that. Though there's such a myriad of businesses, there's not that much. We haven't seen that much competition.
As I say, I don't know how you would be able to do that. I mean, with little nuances and variations in how things are, especially with the tech side of things,
right.
It probably would be very difficult to do so.
It is.
And I like the way that this sounds, that we did mention that an artist colony, but what really it is a gathering of like minds coming together right. to think and to help themselves out of these instances. Do you feel that outside of the business center and going into the real world, that loss of a connection with others is part of a downfall to a business or an entrepreneurial business?
I don't think necessarily, because the other thing we try to build with them is perhaps, and we go through this with a process. We have like a 1 to 24 month session, and then a 24 month to say 48, and we also do a session on beyond business incubation, what does it take? How do you negotiate a commercial lease? We'll bring in some tenant reps to explain that. But the other thing we try to do is to get them to set up an advisory board, a board of directors, somebody to bounce things off, or some individuals to bounce things off. Maybe they end up ignoring them because they want a sounding board. They don't want the whole violin, so to speak. But so hopefully when they get out, they have this connectivity with other entrepreneurs. Maybe they're from the incubator, or we've been able to help them find through the morning mentoring program, through eKickstart, they may be able to find some other mentors, or at least some networking.
Sure, and that's where I was kind of going, is that it opens up a different sense of networking.
I think it's just the fact that when they're in the incubator, they're going to walk down the hall and they knock on the door and they're there.
Right.
When they move into their own space, Eric's not there, or Olivier's not there, or and they've got to pick up the phone and call them, or send them an email or something, or a text.
And I think that does make a difference, obviously, in our day and age when a lot of people don't get that face time. Maybe with this is gaining that sense of community once again, talking to one another, other than just picking up a phone or writing an email.
I think there is some of that. We try to have coffees on a monthly basis. We try to bring in some speakers in that. Some are well attended, some are not. Usually if we have a seminar on finance, how to find money, those tend to be pretty well attended. Though the other thing we've noticed is I think a lot of the entrepreneurs are getting more sophisticated and better versed on how to raise money and where not to raise money, and how to, most of them have learned, as far as working capital, you don't want to use Uncle Sam. Right. You want to make sure you've set aside your money for the tax deposits, the employment tax, and put that in a separate account. We try to instill that.
Do you think that comes from our recent past as to what's happened, or do you think this is a different mindset in a different generation of the means of thinking? And the reason why I think of different generation is that unfortunately my grandmother had just passed away, but she was of the mindset of the Depression era. She was a Depression era child. And we are still going through and finding places where she did not want money allotted in different places, but she hid it in different places. So giving that idea of how money should be allocated, or where it should be taken, and as you were saying, placing this in a different account as opposed to doing it that way. Do you think it's generational, or do you think it's of our recent past?
I think what we're seeing is, with more entrepreneurs, an employee who's not really an owner or chief officer of a company probably does not have that, unless they're in the accounting department or the finance department, does not really that well versed on business finance. And I think we're seeing a change now where one of the things they pick up, I got a finances venture, where do I go about? And they tend to be a little more sophisticated, a little more educated on, okay, I need a certain amount of capital. Some of it can be equity, non-borrowed ownership. Some of it I can probably have a certain amount of debt. And they seem to, the only reason I say that is I'm seeing a little more, we're seeing more sophistication in that realm as far as financing. We still have some, though, that we'll lay out for them that here's the sources and here's the hierarchy of finance, and you can see the wheels turning, and oh yeah, I didn't realize that, an aha moment, which is fine.
Sure.
I'd rather have them know that than going out on a limb and who knows, signing up for something they really can't afford or whatever.
Do you find that a lot of people, when they graduate, kind of gravitate back because they're missing something, or that they relied on something that they didn't realize that out in the real world, again, like we were talking about the camaraderie, but again, something else to the fact of I should have thought of this type of financing, or I didn't think of this when it came to a building, or I'm kind of at a loss.
Well, when someone graduates, we don't sever all ties. If they have an issue or they have something they need question, I mean, we're there to work with them on that. And a lot of them have developed their own resources, their own, guess you could call them mentors, but their own sources, sources, everything from finance to advice or whatever. Plus, I think they probably have become more sophisticated themselves. I mean, Tom Reed mentioned that. He says he realized how much he learned. It was a real education process, not only being a trained scientist, how's that pronounced? Geneticist, yes. PhD, I guess, in that, but then learning the ins and outs of business finance, strategic planning, mergers, acquisitions. He had to pick that up along the way. So I think maybe there's kind of a recognition and a willingness to do that. Plus, I think while we're a mixed-use incubator, we have a certain number of technology-based, be it in measurement technologies, vibration testing, polymers. We have a nanotech firm in there. So they're kind of, they have some of that support if they're already dealing with certain professionals, accountants, attorneys as such to